What is the worst punishment ever created by humans? Not the one that killed the fastest, but the one designed to break the body, the mind, and even the memory of the victim. History offers several answers, and honestly, none of them are easy to hear. This story isn't about shock for its own sake, it's about power. Punishment has always been a tool of authority. Long before prisons and legal protections, rulers used extreme penalties to terrify populations into obedience. The cruelty wasn't accidental, it was, in fact, the point. So, let's examine a few of the most infamous punishments ever recorded, and why societies believed they were necessary. Let's begin in ancient China. For nearly 1,000 years, one punishment symbolized absolute imperial authority, Lingchi, often translated as death by slow dismemberment. Reserved for crimes like treason or rebellion, it was meant to show that betraying the state was actually worse than death itself. Lingchi wasn't just execution, it was public spectacle. The condemned was displayed before a crowd to reinforce loyalty to the emperor. The body became a warning, and the punishment continued even after death. Families could be punished, property seized, names erased from records. The goal wasn't justice, it was deterrence through fear. Lingchi was officially abolished in 1905, as China modernized its legal system. Its end marked a shift away from spectacle-based punishment toward rule of law. Now let's move west, to the ancient Persian world. Greek historians described a punishment known as scaphism, often cited as one of the most prolonged executions in recorded history. According to accounts, the condemned was restrained in a confined space and left exposed to the elements. Whether every detail is accurate remains debated, but the broader point matters. Persian rulers, like many ancient empires, used extreme punishments to demonstrate that defying authority meant suffering beyond imagination. This wasn't unique to Persia, it reflects a universal pattern. When rulers feared instability, punishments grew more theatrical and severe. Next, medieval Europe. Public executions were central to law enforcement. One of the most feared punishments was breaking on the wheel, used across Europe from the Middle Ages into the 18th century. This sentence was typically reserved for violent crimes like murder or rebellion. Executions were held in town squares, where crowds gathered not just to witness justice, but to be reminded of it. The state wasn't hiding its violence, it was displaying it. French philosopher Michel Foucault later argued that these punishments weren't about crime, they were performances of power. The body of the condemned became a stage on which the authority of the state was reaffirmed. And that's the common thread. The worst punishments in history weren't mistakes. They were carefully designed systems. They worked because they spread fear efficiently. One execution could control thousands. Pain was turned into policy. But these punishments also revealed something else: insecurity. When rulers relied on extreme cruelty, it often meant their legitimacy was fragile. Fear replaced consent, violence replaced trust. That's why these methods eventually disappeared. As societies changed, punishment moved behind walls. Executions became private, torture was outlawed, not because people suddenly became kinder, but because public cruelty began to threaten social stability rather than enforce it. So why does this topic still matter today? Because punishment hasn't vanished, it's evolved. Modern societies still debate the limits of state power. Solitary confinement, mass incarceration, capital punishment, and psychological coercion. The tools look different, but the questions are the same. How much suffering is acceptable in the name of justice? So, does fear actually prevent crime? And when does punishment become abuse? These are questions that really make us think about the boundaries of justice and the impact of fear in our society. History shows that when punishment becomes about domination instead of law, societies lose something essential: legitimacy. The worst punishments weren't just brutal, they were warnings about what happens when power goes unchecked. Studying them isn't about fascination with cruelty, it's about recognizing patterns, so they don't return in new forms. Because the past doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it does remember. If this deep dive made you think differently about justice and power, like the video, subscribe for more serious history, and watch our next episode on how ancient laws shaped the modern world.